Welcome to the Avoiding Average podcast. I'm Susan Gates, an astrologer and transformational soul coach, and this is where we explore the extraordinary journeys of people who've stepped off the beaten path and embraced the unknown. Every episode, my guests and I share stories of navigating uncharted waters, overcoming doubts, and choosing to live life on our own terms. These aren't stories of perfection. They're stories of growth, courage, and real wisdom. If you're tired of the ordinary and ready to start your own journey towards something greater, you're in the right place. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of sharing Autumn's Astrocartography consultation, where we chat about her experience in Spain and other locations. If you're interested in learning more about astrocartography or booking a consultation, I'll leave the link in the show notes. Now, let's dive in. All right. Hello and welcome back to the Avoiding Average podcast. Today I have Autumn Martin with me, a fellow podcaster, and we are going to take a look at her astrocartography chart. So Autumn, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm excited that you had reached out because I know I'd been following you for a little while on Threads. So I'm excited to dive into this with you and see where it takes us.
Me too.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share your astrocartography chart. I think when most people look at an astrocartography map, they're used to seeing something like this, where it's all the different angular lines associated with different planets spread all across the world. And I know you had said that you had tried to look at your astrocartography map before, but I guess I'm curious too, what have you kind of looked at before?
I was just looking because I have a friend who's into all of this stuff, and she was saying she's a digital nomad, and so she was using it to figure out places to travel and live for a few months and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
I also love to travel, so I figured maybe doing that would be a good idea, especially considering that I've moved around a lot in the past few years, and some places have been better than others. I was like, maybe there's something in there that could give me some more guidance for the next place that I decide to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's totally fair. It's always funny to me because it's people will have completely different experiences in the same city. And so when someone's like, you should go here because I had a great time, I'm like, maybe not. Let's look at the map first. Awesome. So what I like to do initially is just dive into your birth chart first, just because that gives us a little bit of better understanding of, what kind of energies you're already working with. So you are a Libra sun. Where's your moon? Sitting over there in Cancer moon, and then Mars is there, but you're a Virgo rising as well. Does that look accurate, familiar? Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just kind of diving right into it. So you have that Libra sun sitting in your second house. Libra is all about balance, harmony, justice, and those sort of themes. And sitting in your second house, I feel like justice is very much an important value to you, and fairness in all aspects of life, not just necessarily relationships, but everything. And I feel like Libras tend to see a lot of beauty in the world too. And so being surrounded by things that are beautiful or at least a nice aesthetic is also probably important to you.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the Cancer moon probably also helps with that too. So I always like to take a look at the aspects because that's going to also add a little bit more to the story as to what you kind of experience normally in life. So you have a square over to your north node and also to your moon. It's actually an exact square to your moon. Your moon sits in your 10th house. And I wonder actually too, sorry if I'm jumping around a little bit, but because you have what's considered a night chart, most people tend to relate more to their moon sign when they're born at night or before dawn. And so I'm curious if you feel like Cancer feels more aligned with you than Libra.
It's funny because I feel like Virgo feels more than Libra.
That's fair. That's fair.
I feel like I relate a lot to the Cancer. I don't know as much about Cancer as I do about Virgo, so maybe that's why. But yeah.
Yeah. So Cancer it's a water sign. It's also a cardinal sign. So I would say the water sign that's more likely to take action and take a stand for things. And
Mm.
the archetype is the mother or the nurturer with Cancer. And so taking care of others is like a big theme. And so having that sitting in your 10th house, I imagine like working with others or being there for others is something that is maybe an important theme for your life. And I will caveat that with there are two things that stick out in your chart that may make it harder for you to relate to that. So the first thing is it's right there next to your north node. The north node is like the direction of growth in life. That is kind of what we aim to move forward to. It's an energy that we're generally not really comfortable with. And so it may be harder to relate to. But then you also have Cancer intercepted in your 10th house. And what I mean by that is here's like your 10th house cusp, and there's your 11th house cusp. None of them are in Cancer. And so what usually happens is you have for each house, the cusp is within a sign. But when it's not, it can make that energy a little harder to access or at least be visible to you. And so when you say like, you know, you don't really relate to the Cancer or you don't really know much about it or something, that makes sense because it's
Okay.
not really something that's very, very obvious. Though I wonder if other people see that in you though. So
I get that a lot,
yeah.
like the like nurturing piece, and it would make sense because like I do love working with others. Like I'm a
Mm-hmm.
coach. Like
Yeah.
I work a lot with people, especially when it comes to like their mindset, and like I love to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that people are, you know, okay, and like they're doing well, and that I'm helping them get to where they want to be and all that stuff. So like
Mm-hmm.
I relate to it in that aspect, but it's
Yeah.
always so funny to me, especially because like I work a lot with kids, but I don't want kids. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
plan on being a parent. People always tell me like, "Oh, you're gonna be such a good mom," and then I'm like, "Oh, psych." Thanks, but no.
That's fair. That's fair. And to be fair, I mean, you're still young, so it's like you can you have the ability to make that decision whatever feels right for you, and like you also have the ability to change your mind too. Like nothing's set in stone, right? So yeah, it's funny because it's like you have Aquarius sitting in your fifth house, which is related to children, and Aquarius can often be um, perhaps a little bit more detached in terms of in how they interact with some people sometimes, but they could also be like very all in too. So it's like it's one of those things where if you decide to go and have kids, you will be all in probably. But Aquarius also rules like more unconventional styles of doing things too. So or also like progressive too. So you not wanting kids, that also makes sense too. So it's whatever feels right for you, and I will always tell people that whatever feels right for you is right for you. All right, I feel like I got off on a tangent, but
It's
um
okay.
but yeah, so it, Cancer in the 10th house is like often related to like taking care of others, um but I've also heard it and seen it as like a your business or your work is your baby in a sense. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing that gives you the most emotional fulfillment is taking care of that and doing all that.
Hmm.
So that's just another way that it could be expressed. So I wonder when we look at other places in your map, if you were to go somewhere, or maybe the moon plays a more uh, visible aspect or something like that in the chart, then you may be able to kind of feel into that energy a little bit more. But going into like the Virgo, you had mentioned that, you know, you feel like you really relate to the Virgo energy,
Hmm.
which is no surprise. And so, what happens when you have charts that have intercepted houses? You also have houses where there are two cusps in the same sign. And so, you have that here in Virgo, and then you have that here in Pisces. Um,
What does that mean?
so, it basically just means you get a double whammy of that energy in
Okay.
how like different areas of your life express itself. So you have Virgo rising, and so it's like your kind of immediate impression on people is this very organized, very put together type of persona. You are very detail oriented. You have all your ducks in a row, and you're going to get things done too. Um, And you also have Mars in Virgo as well. Mars, all about taking action, right? But sitting in the 12th house, I imagine it can also lead to, I don't want to say emotions, but like a lot of repressed anger in a sense sometimes as well. So I don't know if you've ever kind of blown up and gotten really angry about something, and not really known why. But I feel like that kind of comes out sometimes with a Mars in the 12th house. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just an observation that I've seen.
Yeah, so for me, I feel like it's more frustration
Mm-hmm.
than anger, but yeah, definitely
Yeah.
definitely comes up sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And um, I imagine it's like one of those things where things don't really go your way, you plan, and things kind of fall through or something. That's
Yeah.
when, yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's also interesting too, because it's like the aspects that this Mars makes, there's a lot going on here. It is sextiling your north node, it's trining your south node, it's sextiling what's over here, your this conjunction of Mercury and Ceres in your second house, and then also trining Saturn. It plays a big role in how you show up in the world. And thankfully it's a lot of really good aspects. You do have a square here going into Chiron in your third house. And so did you growing up, did you feel like you had any challenges with like expressing yourself in or maybe communicating some of the thoughts or ideas that you had, or even pursuing some of the things that you were interested in?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay. And into it's also there with Pluto. Oh, interesting. Okay. So I wonder, because it's right there next to Pluto, it's opposing Jupiter in your ninth house of expansion, wisdom, travel. I don't know if you've felt like you would dive into like deeper studies or going other places or things like that to, I don't want to say escape, but just to get away from your problems in a sense.
Call me out. Yeah. I do have that habit.
Okay. Okay.
I've moved like 5 times in the last 3 years.
Oh wow. Uh, yeah, that's funny. um, it's interesting because it's on this axis, this third house, ninth house. Third house usually relates to like local travel. Ninth house relates to worldly travels or farther travels, and so that's kind of the theme that stuck out to me in a sense is moving around, getting away, and that
Hmm.
sort of thing. But I wonder, I'm not sure like how much you're into spiritual work, but I
Hmm.
assume at least a little bit if you're into
Yeah.
astrology.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like in in your own local space, it's like I feel like that's where maybe you could find some relief. And you also have Venus there too, though. So it's like Venus is all about love, harmony. It rules Libra and Taurus. When I look at this, I'm like, you're like someone that could get lost in books or something. Like
Oh
just
yeah.
yeah, I see you in a corner, just like reading and just like kind of escaping the world in that, and that just brings you a lot of joy and comfort.
It does.
Okay,
Really.
okay, so that's interesting. You have Venus here. Let's see what aspects it makes. This sextile to Neptune. Okay, so that explains the escapism a little bit. And you dreamer a lot too, I assume.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
not a bad thing. I daydreaming is awesome, but then it also makes this opposition to Saturn sitting in the ninth house, and so it's like Saturn rules restrictions. It rules like limitations in a sense. It is. Did you go to college?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you have a challenging time in college?
God, yeah. Not like academically, but like socially, emotionally. Yes.
Okay. Um, yeah. Usually, whenever I see Saturn, it will basically make things a little bit more challenging. until you apply the discipline or that
Mm.
sort of thing. And so sitting in Taurus at the 29th degree, so 29 degrees is an anaretic degree, which is like mastering that energy. And it usually presents pretty significant challenges in the person
Yay.
or
Love
major
that for me.
themes. I think a lot of us have it where there's like that one energy that we're like, ah, why? But to me, like what this kind of symbolizes with it being in Taurus is like Taurus is almost about enjoying the things in life that are real, are tangible, are there in front of you. And Saturn represents working hard towards that. So, um, may I ask what you studied in college?
Psychology.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Um, I would have expected something a little bit more image based. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I'm getting my master's in marketing this
Oh,
fall,
okay.
so
Okay. Okay. That's funny. So I think Saturn kind of demands that you continue to work on on that. And so that having that aspect, the opposition in a sense to your Venus, I think when we look at astrocartography, a lot of people are like, oh, go to your Venus or Jupiter line. Not necessarily always the best case. Especially like for you, you have it opposing Saturn. So wherever you go, there's a Venus line, you're always going to have a Saturn line there too, which
mm,
can make life just feel harder, more challenging.
gotcha.
Saturn in the ninth house, I imagine there is a major theme in your life in terms of diligently working toward expansion of self in not necessarily like not necessarily in like a spiritual sense, because when I see Taurus there and I see Gemini there, I think more in terms of learning. I mean, ninth house represents higher learning, but also Taurus is an earth sign. Saturn also rules earth sign Capricorn. And so it just feels like what can you work towards that will materialize into something tangible in a sense? What can you work towards that is maybe not necessarily just a higher ideal, but something real?
Mm.
And in what ways can you continue to improve yourself, your life, the way that you think, the way that you grow and show up in the world, and use that to help you get there? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I will say you also do have Saturn making this grand trine into your Black Moon Lilith and into your Mars. Are you familiar with Lilith at all?
No.
Okay. So Lilith is oftentimes where we feel shame or something that we feel like we have to repress or something that's not accepted by a society in a sense.
Hmm.
It sits in your fourth house and it sits in Capricorn. Again, Capricorn is also part of this intercepted house thing where you may not necessarily feel that energy very deeply, though you also have your South Node there, which represents where we've been in the past, the type of energy that we're carrying forward and that we're really comfortable. It can be related to like our comfort zones. And so Capricorn is like boss babe type thing, archetype, right? Larry, um, take control, like take the lead, that sort of thing. And so in a home family, it almost feels like maybe that's something the role that you've had to play growing up. So this is your IC, the cusp between your third and fourth house, and that represents your roots, your home, your family life. It can also represent past lives too, if you want to go down that rabbit hole. So it's the energy that you were brought up with. And so Sagittarius is, all about expansion. It's all about wisdom. It's the higher truth. I don't know if you were raised in a really religious household, but that it can also be related to religion.
Mm, yeah,
Uh,
not super religious.
so then I wonder then, was higher education a major, like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. It's either one or the other, where it's like you're either super dogmatic or you're like all in on college, and that's kind of the life path there.
Hmm.
Um, Okay. So I wonder then, do you relate at all to the Capricorn archetype?
I honestly don't know much about Capricorn.
Okay. I guess the way that I like to describe it is the hard worker. They're the ones
Mm,
that are there to achieve really whatever it is that they want. They can tend to be like really materially oriented too, because they are an earth sign. Um, it's all about like making an impact in the world. It's focused on what kind of legacy can I leave behind.
hmm.
Um, and so, what I wonder is like in past lives, did you have very like high and prominent roles in whatever you did before? And so it's like stepping into that leadership ability is probably pretty easy for you in a sense.
Yeah. If I see, I didn't know much about Capricorn, but that totally checks. Like, it
Okay.
relates to that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Capricorn can also be seen as very responsible too. And so, do you have any siblings?
And one younger.
Okay. Did you have to take care of them often?
Not really take care of, but like we're close enough in age that like I'm not that much older. We're 17 months apart, so it wasn't like
Okay.
I had to take care of him, but it was like I was supposed to take care of. Like, does that make sense? Like we were at school or camp or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I had to make sure to look out, but it wasn't like some sibling dynamics where like they're so much older than their
Yeah.
younger siblings. You know?
Yeah. Or, I don't know if the expectation was ever really there for you, but it's like you naturally kind of stepped into that of like, I'm the big sister. I'm going to be there for
Mm-hmm.
you. So we talked a little bit about your fifth house and its relation to children and stuff, but it can also be related to creativity. And so you have Neptune here, which is the planet related to creativity.
Mm.
Also escapism, but that's more of one of the shadow aspects. But in its higher expression, it's like the spiritual connection, the creativity. And so what I wonder is like if you've ever done like a lot of creative projects that were maybe a little bit unconventional to others or not, or maybe even like futuristic, taking new technologies and applying them in creative ways, which I imagine you're probably doing with digital marketing too.
Yeah, I try to now, especially with marketing, but I feel like growing up definitely was into like I don't know if you if you saw like those like duct tape wallets and like
Oh yeah,
the purses and like the rainbow loom bracelets and like that kind of stuff. I was really
yeah,
into that growing up.
yeah. So a little bit more eclectic, but like still fun for you, right? Yeah, gotta love that Aquarius. You also have Uranus there too, which is all like a little bit more rebellious too. So we had talked about the sextile to Venus, and so there's that natural creative ability within you, I think, if you decide to channel it. Okay, so Mercury and Ceres, like when you said that you studied psychology, not too surprising, honestly, um, because in your ninth house you have Gemini. It's ruled by Mercury, so is Virgo, and it sits in Scorpio. Scorpio is all about the deep, the mysterious, the it it's kind of like the detective, like really digging deep. And so, and then you also have Ceres there. Ceres is all about how you nurture yourself, what brings you comfort, what brings you really kind of how you take care of yourself in a sense. And so
Mm.
I wonder if, this drive to really understand like the subconscious and the mind and that sort of thing is just something that is obviously really of interest to you, but is also like important to you on like a fundamental level in a sense. Um, it sits in your second house of values of what is important to you, but it can also relate to like material possessions and things like that. And it almost does feel like that is something that is like truly aligned for you in terms of how you you make your money. um, because it's sitting here, it's trining your north node, um, in Cancer in your 10th house of career, of legacy, and so that trine aspect, what that does is it creates an ease of energy flow between the two, and so it's like you're able to kind of tap into, or really work toward, I guess, this goal in your lifetime to step in as like taking care of others, or nurturing other people in a sense by using the information that you gain from your higher learning, your studies, and also probably helping yourself too at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm really
Okay.
into human design, and I'm a 1/4 manifesting generator. So like I
Okay.
love a good like deep dive, research everything for myself, but then also to
Mm-hmm.
like teach it to other people. So that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I love when like all the different charts and stuff like that, or the ways of looking at things kind of come up
Yeah,
in different
it's
ways.
so wild because I've done like a few different ones recently, like the Enneagram and then like
Mm-hmm.
the I think it was like Myers-Briggs, and like they're all
Mm-hmm.
so accurate. I'm like, what the heck? Am I that easy to read?
I think that's a good thing though. If it all comes up pretty consistent, like
Yeah.
it means like you're answering things pretty consistently and all that. So, yeah. Okay. So, the other thing I wanted to point out real quick is you can't really see it here, but your sun actually forms an exact trine to your midheaven. So, when we look at like astrocartography, you see basically what appears to be like the planet moving onto one of your angles. There's your ascendant, your IC, your descendant, and then your midheaven. Midheaven often relates to career, your legacy, like how people see you in on like a grander stage in the world. And so having your sun trining your midheaven, it almost makes it easier for people to see this side of you, the peaceful, very fair, and I would almost say like elegance in a sense too. That's a big part of who you are and how you show up. And so like I guess the fact that you say that you do relate to the your sun sign, or at least I think you did, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. That's a good thing because then if you can tap into that, then that can really help you out in terms of how you're seen in the world.
Okay, cool. So less
So
Virgo,
Baltimore,
more
not a
Libra.
bad place for you, honestly. So before we move on to the astrocartography map, do you have any questions about your birth chart?
I was just gonna say, like, what do you feel like maybe the top takeaways you want me to know are,
Um, so I
or
guess
if there's
the
anything I should pay more attention to moving forward that maybe I haven't.
yeah. So I guess what I would say is the biggest thing is you know staying focused on what it is that you want to do in terms of the grander scheme of the world. Like there's or even just like your own personal higher studies, your own self development, the way that you kind of grow and show up in the world. Like when I see this Saturn at 29 degrees, those are usually like some of the more significant points in your chart, and having that opposition in your third house, like what almost feels like what's coming up for me is essentially the the need to almost like keep yourself smaller and more comfortable than growing and maybe making things a little bit more challenging for yourself. I don't
Mm,
know if that's felt like a theme in your life, but it feels like that may be something to think about.
okay.
And then also maybe not necessarily like being afraid to step into to more of this role. How can you take the lead and take care of others, but not necessarily um, in like a caretaker type way? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like there's supportive energy in that.
Is it more like community theme? Like, because I feel like that's something that's come up recently for me is like, how can I be better in community with other people
Hmm.
and like supporting other people and in the ways that I also would like to be supported?
Yeah. So, there are different ways of looking at the birth chart, and I don't know if you're familiar with like Placidus versus whole sign, or have heard
No.
anything of that. So, it basically just shifts the way that the houses are represented in the birth chart, and I believe that both are valid. To be completely honest, um, this is Placidus, but if we look at it in whole sign, what ends up happening is your first house turns into Virgo, and everything kind of shifts accordingly. And so each sign represents one house. And so your first house would end up being in Virgo. Your second house would be in Libra, which means like very important, like financial, almost feels like living a luxe life is like really important to you.
It is.
Okay. And then your third house turns into Scorpio, which means the way that you communicate with people are very much like it is nurturing, and it fulfills you deeply to have really deep conversations with people. Like surface level conversations just don't cut it.
Yeah.
Your fourth house turns into Sagittarius, so the home you're in your home life. You're going to be traveling. You're going to be going other places. You're not meant to be staying in one place in a sense. Fifth house turns into Capricorn, so the way that you have fun is really basically going out there and getting shit done in a sense that brings you like satisfaction or fun.
I'm glad you affirmed that for me, because sometimes I'm like, am I just boring? But I really do
No.
like to get stuff done.
No. I mean, either way you look at it, though, and this is the interesting thing, is like either way you look at it, it kind of affirms that, because your North Node and your moon sits in your 10th house, which is related to Capricorn, and so it's like this is what you're here to do in a sense. Like you're here to work hard and like actually enjoy it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so then your 6th house turns into Aquarius, and Aquarius, it's like I don't know if you've really related to routines at all much in your life, but it almost feels like you don't with
No,
that.
I don't.
Yeah, and then your 7th house turns into Pisces, and so it's like partnerships and things like that where they're maybe more on the creative, like not visionary, maybe visionary, but more on the spiritual side. Like those types of relationships are things that help bring you out of your, comfort zone of being very grounded and organized and practical and those sort of things, and really help you see more of the world in a sense. And then 8th house turns into Aries, very diligent about and very proactive with maybe even like diving into your own subconscious and bringing out the shadows and doing something with it. Right? 9th house turns into Taurus, and so you'd still have this Saturn in your 9th house in relation to the higher education. And the way that I would translate that is essentially working slowly but steadily and actually getting stuff done in terms of your higher education, your expansion, your growth. 10th house is in Gemini, and so for that is like speaking or writing or putting things out into the world, and really being seen, for maybe being more multifaceted too. So the manifesting generator part really kind of comes out there. 7th house then is where this comes in, and so that need to create community, that need to like help others within your community would be significant there.
Yeah.
And then the 12th house turns into Leo. And so Leo is all about being seen. It's all about being authentically you. It's being shining out into the world. And I feel like that's kind of a harder place for Leo to be in a sense, because the 12th house is often about things that aren't seen, right? And so I don't know if you've struggled with like putting yourself out there in a sense sometimes, but that's, or maybe people not necessarily seeing like the very authentic side of you, or your true self.
Yeah, that is definitely something I've been working on
Okay.
recently, because I realized that like I don't really necessarily have a problem being seen, but being seen
Mm-hmm.
authentically and
Mm-hmm.
like as who I really am,
Mm-hmm.
that's something I'm working on.
You feel like you have to put on an image that's polished and put together and
Yeah.
very, yeah, yeah. It so it's like literally it, any way you look at it, it's going to come out one way or another, right? And so that's why I kind of like looking at this in both aspects. It's like, because what I think some people will relate, the whole sign is like how others kind of see you, or like what happens in your external world, whereas the Placidus is more of like your own internal world, like the psyche and things like that. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
But yeah, that theme of like constantly working and enjoying that too. This Capricorn Cancer axis here, I think is interesting with the North Node, South Node. But yeah, I wonder right now the North Node and South Node, they're doing their dance in Virgo and Pisces. And so I don't know if like say over the past few months, aspects relating to other people or maybe even romantic relationships. I don't know where you are with that, but if that's been a theme, but it'll probably continue to be a theme in terms in maybe the next year or so
Interesting.
of stepping away from maybe the perfectionism and leaning more into the trust,
Hmm.
faith in the
That's
universe.
that's also a really big theme right now.
Yeah, yeah, yep, yep. So don't ignore the intuitive guidance that you're getting right now. Basically, is what I'll say. But yeah, okay. So any other questions?
I
I
don't
don't know
think
if I
so.
answered your question.
No, yeah, you did. That was
Okay,
so helpful. Thank you.
okay, good. All right, so let's take a look. I know we had briefly covered the fact that you don't really have anything going on in Baltimore, which is where
Mm.
you you were raised, born, and you live. Um, and so that's kind of nice because then it doesn't have like a very heavy energy associated with that,
Oh, that's good.
and so when you go other places, maybe you might feel it. Some places may feel a little bit more chaotic in a sense because there's more energy going on there. Let me just zoom out, make
Okay.
sure there's literally nothing there. So, so that's a good home base to have, honestly.
Okay.
Is like if you ever feel overwhelmed by the world or things that are going on, you can always come back here, and it's going to feel a little bit more calm. It's just going to feel like normal in a sense. Um,
That's literally what it's been.
yeah.
A lot of
Okay.
places, like I feel like I always come back here when I need like just to chill out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, I've said this before, I think, to other people, but it's like a lot of people will tend to, when they look at astrocartography, they're like, oh, where can I go that is going to be helpful or things like that. And sometimes it's going somewhere that doesn't have any energy lines. It's
Mm.
just allowing your body to like recuperate from everything else that is going on, especially if you're not used to it. And so it's like
Hmm.
my best trips have been to places where there are no lines because
Oh,
it's
that's
just
cool.
calm.
Yeah.
So yeah, just something to consider in the future if you ever feel overwhelmed with whatever's going on.
Okay.
But you said that you were interested in Spain, yes?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at Spain. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, anywhere in particular in Spain that where were you?
Madrid.
Madrid. Okay, so you're fairly close to your Saturn line, which I think is interesting.
What's the Saturn line is what we talked about in terms of like the like kind of chaotic stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would say chaotic is the right word for Saturn. I would attribute that more with like Pluto or Uranus, honestly. But
Okay.
um, it's more of a place of challenges, of difficulty, of things where you're kind of forced to work diligently and hard at whatever it is that you're doing.
Mm.
It's a place for great rewards too, though, if you're willing to do that. Given the fact that you do have that Capricorn South Node, I imagine, and you have Saturn in Taurus, I imagine that's probably not as difficult for you as it could be for other people.
Okay.
Does that feel fair?
When you say difficult, what do you mean by that?
So I mean in terms of like
To like get work done or to
basically and not necessarily like difficult in terms of getting work done per se, but it's really asking you to do the work in a sense.
mm,
And so if you're not willing to do the work, then that's when it becomes challenging. um,
gotcha.
it might feel maybe a little bit stickier in a sense in Barcelona because it's much closer to that, but it's
Okay.
also close to your Venus line, your Venus ascendant. So remember how I said like wherever you go where there's a Saturn line, there's going to be a Venus line just because of that tight opposition that it has in your chart. Okay, are you planning on going back to Madrid when you move back there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, So what I like to do is look at the relocated wheel. And so what this essentially is, and what astrocartography is really based on, is your entire natal chart just shifting. So it doesn't change the degree, it doesn't change the sign, but it does change the house. And so all the same aspects are going to show up. It's just going to be in a different area of life. And so the first thing that kind of stands out almost immediately is the fact that your seventh house has Saturn and has Jupiter. And so what I wonder then is, was there much more of a focus on in terms of relationships and the people that you met there? That maybe, you met some interesting people and hit it off really easily or whatnot.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did last time I was there.
Okay. And were they older too?
Um, a few of them.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I think most of them were a little bit older.
Okay. Saturn rules time, and so often whenever we see Saturn in a certain location, it's like it can relate to things kind of taking their time. There are things taking time, or even age of people, if we're relating it to like the houses where people are involved. So
Mm.
seventh house, 11th house, and third house. Let's see. One thing I did notice, and that I was just thinking of on it, you were born in 2000, so you're 25 now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Or I'll be 25 in October.
Okay. Yes, right. Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of like your Saturn return.
I was gonna ask, like,
Okay.
does that mean I'll have it easier because I've had it so hard already? Or it's just gonna get harder?
I will say, so what the Saturn return is can be challenging for a lot of people, and in a lot of ways it's kind of like their first wake up call to grow up in a sense.
Mm.
um, there's another theory out there that the degree at which Saturn is in your chart is when you're kind of forced to grow up in a sense. And so your Saturn return happens around 29, 30.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to say that to like scare you or anything like that, but I guess just something to consider in terms of how you kind of view the things that you're working toward. Yeah, part of me wonders if it's like if you are able to really embrace some of your more emotional side. Because I don't know if you really feel like you are that emotional.
Oh, I am.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder. I don't, if what the word that keeps popping up in my head is like spiritual awakening, and um, that whole process. I don't know if you've felt like you've been through like a spiritual awakening or anything like that before, but it's like it almost feels like that is might be a significant theme, especially since you have maybe Jupiter in that same house in your natal chart. Um, so just something to be aware of, I guess. I don't I wouldn't fear it because I think
Okay.
adding the fear in there is not helpful.
You mean when I go back to Spain this time around, or like the closer that I get to 30 or
The
29, 30?
Yeah, the closer that you get to 29 and 30.
Okay.
Just what usually happens is like there's a shift in basically how you see the world, how you see your life trajectory kind of going, maybe taking more responsibility for your actions and the things that you're doing. Like where can you come back to being like maybe a little bit more grounded? So yeah, that's all I'll say of that. And regardless of where you go, you're still going to kind of feel that. You may feel it a little bit more, and it may come from some of the relationships that you have if you're in Madrid at that time.
Okay.
But yeah, I wouldn't try to run away from it because it's going to find you one way or another.
I was gonna say, where
But
can I go to avoid it?
yeah, I mean, if I'd say if you want to avoid heartbreak, then maybe not in Madrid then. But like,
Okay.
again, like I'm definitely like a proponent of like what's meant for you is going to find you one way or another, right?
Mm-hmm.
The experiences that you've signed up for, that's going to find you in any way. And so it's if it's not in relationships, it could just be in whatever it is you're seeking in terms of your own growth. So I don't know, but there's that. So Yeah, sorry about that. What I find interesting too, though, is that you become a Scorpio rising
Oh, really?
in Spain. Yeah, and so Scorpio rising is very interesting because it's like you tend to be a little bit more private, but also have like this bit of mysteriousness in a sense too. Um, and so it kind of makes you a little bit more magnetic. Could also be very misunderstood, but you know it's an interesting kind of aura there. You do have,
Hmm.
if you're looking at it in whole sign, Mercury sits in your first house, and so do you feel like you get in your head a lot when you're there?
I was last time.
Okay,
Like that whole season was kind of in my head most of the time.
yeah,
Especially like when you say like that like kind of more private aspect. Like I thought I was gonna like vlog and post my entire experience there. I posted
hmm,
probably like a few things about when I was there. So yeah, that kind of
yeah.
resonates.
Did you? I assume you were able to get like a decent amount of work done there, though. Maybe not necessarily in the way that you wanted to, but perhaps in organizing how you wanted to go about doing things in your business.
Oh yeah, that's like when my business kind of like took off again
Hmm.
when I was living there because I was like so like head down,
Hmm.
get my work done, like
Yeah,
that kind of vibe.
yeah. The Virgo midheaven with your Mars sitting in your 10th house is like very much action oriented. Like, I think a lot of people would look at Mars and say, oh God, not that, because it's considered like a malefic. But it really ends up being like a malefic if you're not channeling that energy in the right way. And so it's like if you're using it to be productive or you're using it to like do things constantly as opposed to sitting around, then it may come out as like anger or it may come out as lashing out or the negative stereotypes of that Martian energy too. So I guess the only thing I'd say is you're planning on going back. Being prepared to work is not necessarily a bad thing. I think you're kind of built to work and get satisfaction out of it. Um, but I guess make sure that you're also maybe not being too hard on yourself. Virgo has this tendency to be very perfectionist. It has a tendency to be like, if it's not perfect, then I'm not putting it out into the world.
Hmm.
Um, and that can kind of hold you back in a lot of ways. And so it's like, where can you kind of take that Virgo inspiration, apply it in short bursts so that you get that energy out, and then maybe come back to it later as opposed to constantly critiquing the work that you're doing as you're doing it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Good mental note, especially
Yeah.
considering I'll be in school.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay, so I know it's in Placidus right now. So in whole sign, your moon and your north node would be in your ninth house. And so it's funny that you're going to be going to school there because ninth house rules higher education.
Oh, does
Yeah, so it's like
it?
you're destined to go there, honestly. That's funny. And it also probably brings you a lot of emotional fulfillment being there too. On the flip side, though, is if you're looking at in Placidus, these sit in your eighth house. And so I imagine a lot of deep inner work is probably happening under the surface as well while you're doing that. Yeah, so whole sign would be like outer world, Placidus inner world in a sense. And so eighth house is all about the occult, kind of diving into the shadows in a sense. I don't know if like emotional release is something that happened for you while you were there at all.
Oh yeah.
Um, okay, you may experience more of that while you're there. Just
Great.
FYI. And then I guess the other interesting thing is so Chiron moves into your first house. Chiron is the wounded healer. It is the thing that like some of the wounds that we carry with us. And with it sitting in your first house, I wonder if maybe there are some feelings of like maybe not being good enough, some self worth things that came up for you. Were you there to study the last time that you were there?
No, I was actually there. I taught English part-time as like an
Okay.
assistant, English assistant teacher.
Okay.
Um, and that was mostly just for the visa. I was mostly
Okay.
there to like work on my business and travel a little bit more, but
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I guess just something to be mindful there. If you ever feel like while you're there, while you're studying, particularly because it's in Sagittarius, and maybe feelings of not being good enough, not or whatever come up for you, Um, I would probably counteract that with, actually going out there and helping others. Like, I don't know if tutoring is something that you still want to do while you're there, or if you can do, then that might help. And then second house, south node. So what I kind of see is so your Lilith and your south node move into your second house related to money, your values. Do you ever interact with like anything related to poverty or anything like that while you were there?
A little bit, but not that much.
Okay. And I guess what I mean by that, was there like any shame associated with it? Like the things you had versus what other people may not have had?
Yes, a little bit, but it was more like what I had versus what I wanted to have.
Okay. So almost like you felt guilty in a sense for wanting what you wanted?
No, if guilt, I'd say guilty, but like, I mean, yeah, sometimes for sure, because
Okay.
when I think about the privilege that I have versus a lot of the people that I was interacting with, especially like some of the kids that I taught at school,
Mhm.
that kind of thing, sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I feel like mostly it was just like my drive and like desire for more than what I had in that time when I was there. And
Mm.
like in terms of like finances and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I guess just something to be mindful of. Maybe I don't know what experiences you're going to have the next time you go. It's never a guarantee, I guess, when we look at this. Um, but yeah, just something to be mindful of when you go there, and maybe how you feel when you're there. Lilith relates to shame, so own it, own whatever it is that you want and what you're working toward. That's all I'll
Okay.
say. That'll make it easier.
Okay, cool.
And then it squares your sun in your 11th house. And so maybe other people may not understand what it is that you want or why you want it. But if that's what is of value to you, then just own it.
Okay.
Okay. So I know we have a little bit more time left, but before we move on, is there anything here that you had questions about?
I don't think so. So you would say
Okay.
like Spain's like, or at least Madrid is like pretty neutral aside from like what we already talked about. Like there's nothing too dramatic going on there.
I don't think so. You're meant to be there, honestly, because
Okay,
that's what it
cool.
feels like. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Yeah, just be mindful, I guess, of the Scorpio tendencies to try to hide.
Okay.
And then I know that you wanted to look at Iceland as well because you said you felt like you were drawn. That's funny. Okay. So you've been to Iceland before, I assume?
Twice, yeah.
Okay. You have a sun line going right above that sun ascendant. And so it's like your ability to shine and be seen for who you are, your authentic self is like comes out a lot easier there. Um, it's funny because I think a lot of people usually have like a lot going on. I know I have like a crap ton of lines going here, but yours is actually pretty. I won't say empty, but pretty even. So where
Okay,
is
cool.
Reykjavik? I don't know where in Iceland you were, but
Yeah, I was in
um,
Reykjavik.
okay, yeah, that's really close. And then the other line that you have there is a Uranus ascendant. So, or Uranus IC. And what I'll say with that is, don't move there long term.
Okay.
Not unless you want constant change and shakeups in terms of your living situation.
Okay.
Yeah. Uranus is great for like short trips because it can make things exciting, interesting, new, but it also brings instability and constant
Mm,
change and unexpected change too. So,
gotcha.
yeah. One of the last people that
Okay.
I spoke with, she's living on her Uranus IC line and it's been chaotic for her.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And were there any places that you'd recommend I'd look into that I maybe I haven't been before? Or like how do you tell like what are like good places for
Yes.
people?
So that really depends on what it is you're looking for.
Oh,
Is there a
okay.
certain theme in your life that you're looking to kind of bring out a little bit more?
It's so hard because I feel like right now in the season I'm mostly looking for like stability, like groundedness, peace, calm,
Yeah.
abundance. Like those are like the major themes right now. Like I'm not too heavy on like relationships right now or like I don't know. Like that would be nice
Yeah.
maybe like the next year or two, but I feel like my big focus is like health and wellness, inner peace, like stability.
Okay. Uh, what about Paris? What do you feel about Paris?
Oh, I love Paris.
Okay.
I've been there twice now. I was thinking about going for my
Okay.
birthday.
Okay. I mean, so Madrid's not a bad place, honestly,
Okay.
for what you're looking for. If you're looking for stability, I think that could be a decent place to be. I don't really know if there's really much around here that you would want to be near. But yeah, Paris could also be a good option. Basically, is right there. Lisbon could also be nice.
Oh,
Blanca, I don't know if Morocco has ever been on your radar.
not really, but my best friend is obsessed.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Athens, I don't know.
It's on the list for sure.
Okay, yeah, I wonder if like if you were to move to like a Saturn midheaven, if that would be somewhere that would be beneficial for you, because then that would put your Venus on your IC, and so it's like you would have almost the best of both worlds, where it's like where it is where they should be. Um, but let's see, it's in the United States actually,
Oh,
which is kind of nice.
interesting.
Colorado, Denver. Have you thought about Denver?
I've been there once. It was nice.
Yeah, your Venus IC line basically goes right through Denver.
Oh, wow.
So let me pull up your relocated chart real quick. I don't know that there's really that much up there. Yeah, so it's like your Saturn moves to your midheaven, Venus is right there on your IC, so home life. Mars moves into your first house, so still have that drive very much. And that may honestly come out in terms of your own physicality in a sense too. So physical health may
Okay.
become an important aspect of your life. Your moon moves into your 11th house, which is actually kind of a nice place to be. So it's like very nurturing in terms of the community that you build there, and likely probably meeting a lot of really important people, important friendships in your life there
Okay.
too. Jupiter moves into your 10th house, so luck, expansion, growth, that sort of thing. Mercury sits in your third house, communication. Sun sits in your second house, so finance, values, and that sort of thing. I don't know. Denver could be awesome actually.
Okay. Good to know.
So yeah, just something to consider in the future.
Oh, and
Uh,
then just like super quick, because I thought this was funny. I had to ask, are there any like negative lines in Southern California? Because I lived there for 6 months in San Diego and then near LA for a little bit, and it was horrible. I
really?
did not like it. No.
So I don't really see. Let me zoom out a little bit more, make sure that there's nothing that pops up. But you do actually have a crossing there. Let me see if I can figure out which one that is. Because of course it is Sun and Neptune line, along with a Venus and Mars. Was there like, do you have conflict there with other people?
Oh my God, yes. My former roommate, Jesus Christ, she was a bitch.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's sitting there right there next to that parent line. And so what I would say is like maybe north of Los Angeles would be okay. But yeah, the southern part is like a little farther up north.
Okay.
It's close to that Venus Mars line. And so it's like relationships with other people are probably not great.
Yeah, no, it was not great.
Yeah. So um
This is so
yeah.
interesting. I can't wait to
Yeah.
have you on my podcast to chat like about the more like details of like all of this because there's so many terms and it's so
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's a big old rabbit hole, that's for sure. But I love it. And so hopefully this was helpful for you and at least give you some more insight into places you've been and places you might go.
Yeah, it was super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you have any other questions or anything that comes up, please let me know. I know that that was a lot that we covered um, in just a short amount of time, but yeah, always happy to help.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing this.
Of course.
Thank you for listening today. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, I'd appreciate if you liked, shared, and subscribed. Your support really helps out the podcast and its reach. Thank you again for listening, and if you're interested in your own astrocartography, the link is in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful day.